Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Refine and Shine podcast. I'm super excited for my guest today. She is amazing. She is Corree Roofener. She is a dynamic entrepreneur coach, a podcaster, an advocate who believes in living life with purpose, passion, and courage. She is a mother of 6 and a foster mom for over 13 years, and she has cultivated a deep understanding of resilience, compassion, and the power of community. Her journey through motherhood and entrepreneurship has shaped her into a leader who strives to make a meaningful impact in her home and in the world. Fueled by her passion for empowering others, Corree has built multiple ventures, each rooted in her desire to inspire growth and change. From a successful bookkeeping firm to financial coaching for women entrepreneurs, to founding a nonprofit organization that supports foster youth aging out of care, she uses her expertise and personal experiences to guide others towards their goals. Her story is one of courage and transformation, overcoming life's challenges to create a legacy that redefines success on her own terms. At the core of everything she does is a commitment to growth, both personal and professional, whether it's helping women reclaim their dreams, creating systems of support for foster youth, or navigating the everyday joys and trials of family life. Corree brings authenticity, faith, and a deep desire to make a difference. Through her work, she continues to foster hope, connection, and the courage to thrive in the story you desire to leave. Thank you so much, Corree, for being on here today.
Thank you, Angelina, for having me. I am honored.
What I love is that you have done so much. And it's not just like one thing, you have a bunch of things that you've been able to create. And so tell us all about this. Have you always been this type of entrepreneur? Tell us about give us a little backstory of how you became the woman you are today.
It's funny because I would have described myself as the very opposite of what we just talked about, what you just read. I described myself as a shy introvert growing up. I was the middle child of 5, but I've always been a caretaker. And everything that you just described comes back into my God-given purpose of caretaking, of creating spaces for people to nurture, to heal, to learn, right? So whether it's motherhood, whether it's the nonprofit, whether it's bookkeeping, whether it's financial coaching, it is all based in the same thing. And that is my God-given desire to help other people feel seen.
Mhm. I love that. I didn't know that you were the middle child of a family of 5. I am the middle-ish child of a family of 6.
Okay.
So at first, the first 5 my mom had, and I was the middle child. And then when I was 10, she had her last child. And so then it
Okay.
became a family of 6. But yeah.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
so I can relate with what you're saying is that, you have that nurturing, caring feeling that's kind of like being a caretaker and things like that. I don't know how it was for your family, but for us, it was like the older 6 and then the older 3 and then the younger 3. And so like I was the baby of the older 3, but I also was the one that took care of the younger 3. So it
Yeah.
was like dual roles that I played.
Yeah. And it's funny. I was always the responsible one. I was always the one that my mom leaned on as a single mom. And so I did a lot of childcare, a lot of caretaking, a lot of adult responsibility, if we're being honest. But it
Mhm.
was also something that came very naturally for me, right? My older sister was not that person. And so it was her. I was actually the second of 5, but my brothers were a little bit later. And so it was I was the middle of the 3 girls and then the brothers came. But it's just always been this knowing. I mean, that's the only thing I can say. It was a knowing. I just didn't know how to love it. I didn't know how to embrace it as a child.
Mhm. Oh, yeah, I can relate to that. What I think is so important though is that have now have a family? I believe I think I said 6 kids.
Yep, 6 kids. Yeah.
And so, did you always want a big family? Knowing the things you said, your mom was a single mom, and so my
Yeah.
mom was a single mom for quite some time too, and so I understand like it was hard and seeing that stuff. For me, when I didn't want kids because I felt like I was never going to be able to provide for my children because I saw my mom struggle so much, and I didn't want to be the one that
Mm.
struggled. And so, but I was so blessed that I had my children, and I do not regret them. But it was something that I struggled with for a little bit when I found out I was pregnant. I'm like, am I going to be able to provide? Am I going to struggle? Am I going to do all these things? I was a teen mom. So how was that for you?
It's funny that you say that because I'm sitting in that thought process of why didn't I feel that way? Right? Because we had a lot of lack, right? I was definitely raised with a scarcity mindset.
Mhm.
And I was a teenage mom. So I had my first child at 18. And but what I will say to you, Angelina, is there was one thing I knew for sure as a child, and that was that I was going to be a mom. That was it. That
Mm,
was the only thing I knew. I didn't want to be a nurse or a ballerina or a doctor or any of those things, a teacher, even though I played all of those things. What I wanted in my heart was to be married to the same person for the rest of my life and to have babies. That was my goal. That was my dream. And so when I got pregnant, the one thing I knew for sure is that this child was born for me. This
mhm,
child was going to change my life and change the trajectory of this life. And we shouldn't, I don't say that that's the right thing to do. I just know that for me, it was a really big place where God started showing up in my life. Like, just listen, just believe, just have faith, and I will stand with you. And I can remember having the conversation to my now husband, but then boyfriend, was I'm pregnant, and if you don't want to be a dad, then leave. Like I just like here's your out. I'm not even going to fight about this. Um, but it wasn't purposeful. It was purely accidental. And it was like this is happening for a reason, and life is happening to me, for me, not to me. And so
mhm,
I just never felt that way. But what I did drive me to do is what I will say is that it drove me to be very focused on changing
mhm,
that legacy, right? That it didn't have to be a life of scarcity, that we could live and change those cycles and break those cycles. Because my husband is also from a single mom family that had scarcity mindset, honestly, and really did never they had enough. They didn't have anything beyond that. And
mhm.
so I guess to me, it was a challenge almost. It's like, how can I change this and create something different?
Yeah, I can relate. That was when I found out I was pregnant, with my high school sweetheart, which now husband. So see so many similarities, and we
Yes.
didn't even I didn't like I'm like I got chills of all the similarities that we have. Um, with him, when we found out, I was like, okay, and he came from a family of two, like it was just him and his brother. But again, he had seen his mom go through, trials and tribulations and several marriages before, she's been married to the same um his stepdad now for I don't know how long, but quite some time. But, he knew him and I both knew no matter what, we knew we were gonna have some hard times, but we knew that we wanted to stay. We didn't know what a working marriage looked like, but we knew that we were gonna try to work on our marriage and
Yeah.
try to stay together as much as we could. And I will tell you it has was hard. There was a lot of trials and tribulations. Suffered My husband suffered from a lot of mental health illness, issues, um, addiction. But now he's 11 years sober. A lot of things that we had. And so for me, my thing was is I was always driven. I always felt having my children forced me or made me want to pursue things that I never thought I could pursue. Uh,
Agreed.
being a not and sometimes it was to a bad where I became like not like a workaholic, but learning and that's what but from those lessons made me become a like learn gave me the lessons that I know today that I can use to teach others. Like you said, it's like everything that we go through is for us, even though some might be painful, it is for a purpose for us to teach others how to, do not do the mistakes that we had.
Yeah.
And I love that you talked about the scarcity mindset because that's, we talked before we started airing, like I am affected deeply by this government shutdown. And it's something that I never thought would happen to me. And it's like, I will tell you, to be honest, there's been times I've been a little bit, I have broken down and cried a little bit. And I'm like, okay, it's okay to cry. It's okay to just release. Um, because, that's okay. Even Jesus wept, right? The shortest
Right.
verse in the Bible because I was like, you worked from, as a child, getting in line to have government cheese and peanut butter and bread that you would wait in line to get these things, living off of food stamps, and I was like literally born in the projects. Like I was born in the projects, born at home. And I worked so hard never to have to never have to be in that situation with my children, never having to be dependent on government assistance and everything. Not that I say that that's wrong, because those programs are in place for a reason. But I always felt like, I want to make sure that others can have those, and I will work my butt off to not use those resources unless I need them. And now it's like, wow, like we have nothing, and it's like, what do we do? And I'm like, okay, well, we'll figure it out. And
Yeah.
but I love that you're a financial coach now, and you have like, so how did you get into that with, was it because of the scarcity mindset, or, growing up with less, that you started getting into financials? How did that come about?
You know, purely by accident, for lack of a better word. I was always very intentional about money. So money, growing up, you think about like the middle school years and how what you wear and what you drive and all those things are so important to you. And I'm not saying they weren't important to me, but even during that time, I was like, how can I get what I need? And when I say need, like the behavior, the value that I need in a way that serves me, right? Like it wasn't about my mom can't afford that, so I can't have that. It was like, how can I make this happen? And so I
Mm,
started working in the third grade. Believe it or not, most people were like, what? That's like way too young. But I had my very first paying job in the third grade, and I was buying my school clothes from the third grade on. And that just changed something in me. It gave me power. It made me realize that I get to choose
mhm,
what happens, because earning money is an action. And that's what most of us just forget. We think, well, this is my W-2 job. This is how I earn money. And this is all I earn. And this is all there's ever going to be. And that's scarcity. Because the truth is that you can earn more. Abundance comes from the fact that you have the God-given right to go out there and be abundant, right? To earn abundantly, to give abundantly, to seek abundantly, all of those things. And so from that time forward, I just realized like you get to choose. And so I was a high school mom, right? I was living, I'm not gonna say the projects, Angelina, because we lived in Oregon, so there wasn't really projects. But I mean, one of the worst parts of town by myself with my child until Chad and I realized like this is what we're gonna do, right? So, and it was about that. What do I do? So I worked full time and went to school full time, right? It was just
mm,
that thought process, and life happened to us just like it happens to everybody else. And my husband fell off of a roof when I was 9 months pregnant with our second son. And
mm,
so we lost 40% of our income, because on work comp, it's 60% of your income. And I couldn't work any longer because he couldn't lift the baby.
mm,
So the offset between childcare and all the things just didn't make sense, right? And so I was home, and that was my first slap in the face again. Like, oh my gosh, right? And I'm not going to say I dealt with that one really great. I didn't. We actually ended up filing bankruptcy because I couldn't figure out a way around it. But that bankruptcy story was my mom's story. And it brought a lot of shame. And it brought a lot of, this is never going to happen to me again. I am going to create something different. Lo and behold, we're getting there. We're retraining. My husband's in a good job. We buy our first house, and smack, it happens again. This time it's me. Medically, I was diagnosed with a chronic pain condition, and things just were hard, right?
mhm,
And what came from that is, one, a desire to be at home with my kids and that need to be present. And I was able to do that. But I also knew that I needed to create a different cycle for my family. And so one of the things that happened for me in college was that I found accounting and I loved it. It wasn't my degree though, okay? It was just these random business accounting classes I was taking. And my sister ended up needing a bookkeeper. And I'm like, you know what? I really like this and I could do this from home. And so I asked her, would you be willing to let me try? And so I went to the community college and I got my certificate, just finished off those classes. And that was the beginning. It was an accidental beginning because I was following something that not only that I am good at, but that I really liked. It kind of filled me up, and it allowed me to live within my values. You're going to hear me talking about values a lot because your core values truly are the foundation of everything you do. And so when we are able to live in our core values, one of those for me is family. And when I mean family, I meant being at home with my kids. Everything else started to line up, right? Because I was full. I was content in life, right? And so for the first 10 years, it was two clients. It was our vacation fund. It was just the way that we were able to live again in those core values.
Mhm.
And so life again happened, and we had given ourselves the opportunity to make some really big changes in life. And when I say that, what I mean is that we lived below our means. We saved. We had an additional piece of property that we were using as an investment piece of property. All the things that finances typically look like, right? But that
Mhm.
was very intentional throughout our entire lives. And so we sold everything, and my husband left his career of 22 years, and we moved to Montana. And I said, I'll build the business. That's what we'll do. I'll build the business, you build the property. Because when I say we moved to Montana, we were literally pulling into 20 undeveloped acres, no driveway, no nothing. So we had to do all utilities, the house, the barn, everything. So it was one of the, I guess, most courageous things I've ever done, but I never felt that way. I mean, I can look back and go, what in the hell were you thinking? Like, honestly, that's you don't have a business degree. How did you know? How did you know? Because I just knew I could do this. And again, all I'm going to say is that knowing of who you are, right? And I knew that I was tenacious. I am tenacious. Like, if I believe in something, I'll make it happen.
Mhm.
And that's how we began building. And it hasn't been perfect, and it hasn't been, I'm 3 years in right now to building the business to a full-time income. And for the first time, actually, I'm seeing consistent growth every single month, or turning clients away. And so that is, again, being ready, because they always say you can only grow to the capacity you're ready to grow. I truly believe that, not only like mentally and physically, internally, not just systems. I mean, who are you? What do you
Mhm.
stand for? And what do you know about yourself? Because if that's not clear, building a business or growing in any way actually is going to be really, really difficult. And so through the process of learning about myself and really connecting to myself for the first time, not always giving to everybody else first, have I been able to do that? And then also systems, right? You have to,
Yeah.
business is about systems. And so just growing those systems. So that's like the long way around how I got here. But there wasn't this perfect plan or this magic pill. It was intentionality and knowing.
I love that. And I love that you said, like, it's just like it wasn't like perfect. It didn't happen. It wasn't linear. Like, it goes up and down like your heartbeat. There's going to
Yes.
be highs and lows, but because you've made some proper investments, or, thought about your financials, you guys started to, live below your means, which is what, that's kind of what me and my husband, we were talking about earlier when we were at the grocery store, like, okay, this is what we got here. This is what we got here. This is what's paid off. This is like going through this. And I'm like, we're like, he keeps saying we're going to be okay. And I'm like, I know we are, because we've been here before.
Yeah.
I kind of had something similar, lots of things that were similar when I was pregnant with my daughter. Had to go on disability because I had so many issues with her before I was even, so like income goes up and down. And the same thing when my husband got sick and had to, become on full term disability. That was, you just lose everything, or, more than half your income, and you just go through it. And I think that God puts us in these situations, because He wants us to, maybe we're being too complacent,
Yeah.
and He wants to challenge us to think outside the box and to think about, what do we have that we need to appreciate? Because when we always want more and more and more, like I'm talking like, we want the money, the bank account to grow, or we want like the new cars or the new this or new that. Is that really what we need? And what my husband always says is that stuff can't go with you to heaven.
No.
And so what is it that we really, really want? And when we were talking about like what's our future going to look like? What are we going to do? Where are we moving money around and things like that? It's like we're looking at it as what do we can enjoy while we're here on earth, but
Mhm.
what is also the what are we doing? What are we spending on or we been spending on that we don't need to spend on? And we've kind of been making those changes over the last few years. And like one of the things is we realized we were going out to eat a lot, and I know that date nights are
Mm.
so important. They're so important for you, but we did ours a little differently. We were like and with this, last year when we kind of like were going through our finances, you do your end of the year budget or your end of the year stuff, and you start adding up things, and you're like, "We spent this much money eating out."
Yeah.
And so we're like, "Oh, what can we do?" So we decided to change that, and we ended up investing in a grill that we wanted so that we
Mhm.
can make our meals at home a little bit different, like making ourselves, like little things like that. And we plan our meals together. We do our like things like that that has been so much more fun than having to, and we call that our date nights. And it's like
Mhm.
you can make us like we've improved our backyard and made it more welcoming for us to enjoy, and it's so peaceful. And in
Yeah.
fact, like, we keep, like, finding ways to improve it, with not out costing a lot of money, um, and it's been peaceful, and it's like you don't
Mhm.
always have to spend money to have abundance, and I know you talked about abundance earlier too. It's like, where are you spending it and I think about it as time, a time management coach that I am. I always think about you can't money can come and go. But time is something that we can't get back. Like no matter what, it's like we're constantly spending every second's going away. We only have about, I think it's like 4,000 weekends and in our lifetime on average. And it's like, what are we doing? What are we wasting time on? And are, wasting a weekend on or wasting time worrying about things that we can't control. What we
Right.
can control is what we spend, how we spend our time. You mentioned, I think, intentionality, or being present. Those are things that are so important. And I think that the way that you coach on financials and how you help people financially is the same way that I look at how we spend our time. And so I
Yeah.
love that what you're doing. Um,
Yeah. One of the things I want to say when you're talking about that is that, you know, one of the things that I always ask people is to collect your evidence. And yes, that's a numbers thing, but it's also what you're talking about. When we remind ourselves what we've already done, when we remind ourselves where we've already come from, that's collecting our evidence.
Mhm.
And the legacy component that I challenge people on is that, you know, our money is as original, as unique as our thumbprint. Everybody's money story is so different. But we've lived in a world that has really wanted to put money in a box. They want it to look a certain way. And that is my number one component of retelling a new story is that your money is not going to look like your parents. It's not going to look like your brothers or your sisters, maybe even your husbands. I coach married couples that have very different money stories, but yet have the same core values. It's just how they look at it, right? And that is beautiful. That is the gift in living an abundant lifestyle. And so I would challenge people to ask yourselves, do you put the definition of legacy with assets? Because legacy is actually how someone remembers you. And so if we think about it in that fashion, our legacy, if it's about assets, what a sad story,
Mhm.
right? Our legacy should be how you made someone feel, what you want to be remembered for, i.e., well, maybe that's cooking Sunday dinner every Sunday. What, it doesn't matter. Maybe it's going in the shop. I remember my grandpa. Here's a great example. My grandpa, we would visit him in Sodaville, Oregon, and we would go out to the shop, and he'd always have these bags of nuts hanging and these nut crackers, and we could have soda and nuts, and we would get a quarter to go to the candy store, which would give us 25 pieces of candy because there was still penny candy at that little tiny store. The legacy of the memory that he gave, which cost him a quarter,
Mhm.
lives on in 5 children for multiple generations. Do you see what I'm saying? And so
Yeah.
we have to really rethink or just question ourselves in the definition of what we think of when we think of legacy, assets, income, expenses, all the things. What is it the definition for you in your life? And are you still living somebody else's money story? Because those money stories are formed when we are really little. Like you think about like the amygdala, right? Those are the beliefs.
Mhm.
We're like 6 and 7. We don't even understand this stuff. Yet those are when a lot of those beliefs are being formed in our lives. You and I talked about being children of single parents and that scarcity mindset. And is there going to be enough? And you can't have braces and you can't have this and you can't have that. There's just not enough money. I'm sorry. Or watching your mom work 2 or 3 jobs or your dad work 2 or 3 jobs, right? And so it's always like there's never enough. And
Mhm.
that is the belief. That's the story that you have brought all the way to this place in life that really isn't yours.
Yes. I just thought of something when you said that, or not something. Something came flashed in my a bunch of things flashed for me when you were talking. You talked about your first jobbing and when you were in third grade. I used to do in third grade. We lived in a trailer park, and I it was after my parents had divorced, and we lived in a trailer park, and the manager we had, like, there was vacant lots, and the manager would water them to keep so that the value stayed up if people
Mhm.
wanted to rent them and stuff, and when she would go on vacation, she would hire me to pay she'd pay me $10 a day to water those lots, and I would do yard sales too. I would buy stuff at thrift stores and then resell them at yard sales for a little bit more.
I love it.
That
I
because
love
that's
it.
if I wanted to go to Disneyland with my one of my best friends, if I wanted to go to Disneyland, they would pay for my ticket, but if I wanted spending money, I needed to my mom couldn't afford it, so I was like, "How
Yeah.
can I make that money work?" And so that's what I would do. And, in 8th grade, the summer between 8th and ninth grade, I got a job as a su in this as a summer youth program for the state of California. They don't have it anymore, but I got a job at the courthouse. It was during the Aaron Brockovich case.
Uh-huh.
Because I lived in
Wow.
the famous Barstow, town of Barstow, where the PG&E case was going on, and, I worked at the courthouse that summer. I actually worked 2 summers, and I got paid minimum wage was 4.25. I got paid 4.50 an hour. I got 40 hours a week, and I used that money to buy my braces.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
And s
Exactly.
and so that's learning how to appreciate the value of a dollar and things like that. But the other thing that you said, that was really like, the legacy, um I had just recently, almost about 2 years ago, left my former job. I had worked for the Department of Defense at the same production plant that my great-grandpa helped build. It
Oh,
actually was the
wow.
plant that's the reason we ended up in Barstow, California, was because my great-grandpa who was in the military he was from New Mexico, came over to Barstow to build this, production maintenance facility, and then when he retired out of the Marine Corps, he worked at the Marine Corps at the base, and then when he retired, the next month, my grandma got a job there, and she became the first female journeyman mechanic. So she worked
Wow.
herself, as a which was unknown to have a female mechanic, and so that was a legacy, right? She's
Yeah.
building this legacy. My great-grandpa had this legacy. Well, then when I worked there, my dad worked there, and my son now works there. But one of the when I left, and it's very hard to get on. For me, it took me. Applied for the place probably 500 applications before I got on. When I got
Wow.
on, I was so excited, and I worked myself from a secretary almost to the highest that I could work myself up to. And when I decided to leave, everybody was like, "You have this great job. Why do you want to leave?" And I said, "Because I want to leave a legacy. I want to leave a legacy behind." When I say leave, everybody's like, "How's that leaving a legacy?" I said, "I wanna show that my family or my kids or my children or anybody after me, that you don't have to stay where you're at. Yes, this
Yeah.
place has meaningful, I have ties here, I have this and that, but I was almost capped out, and I could stay there and work 12 more years, or at that time, 14 more years, making the same amount of money and have no growth, or I can leave, go and take a promotion and, show my family that you can go anywhere you wanna go in
Right.
life. And that
And
was a ho
that change is uncomfortable,
Yes,
but
it's
possible, right? Like
yeah.
it's uncomfortable. We get stuck in that thought process that just because it's hard or just because we have to do something that feels very fearful, that we shouldn't do it. But fear is a gift. And we need to start looking at fear as a gift, right?
Mhm.
Because it will propel you in ways that, you know nothing else will. Nothing else will. It doesn't matter if you're talking about education, money, or any of that. Fear is the number one growth factor in life. And, you talked a little bit about purpose, right? And getting and how God works in our lives and gives us this pain or gives us these things that we may not understand right then. And then we go forth. We keep taking one step in front of the other, and it all starts making sense. And I will tell you that the foundation, the nonprofit that we started, is that I have never in my life dreamed of being a foundation director, someone to start something, to be that, what do I want to say, like that lion, that roarer, that person that stands up and says, no, something needs to change. That's not me. I have several siblings that act that way, and that's their job, right? But God put something in me with foster care, because like you had described, we did do foster care in the state of Oregon for 13 years before we moved. And it was the hardest and most beautiful blessing of our lives. And I really, really honestly thought I was done. I thought I was done. We closed our case after our fourth child was born, our sixth child, but fourth adopted child. And we're like, we are done. We need to move forth and raise our family. And it was hard. I grieved a lot. And when we got to Montana, I realized I'm not done. I'm just done being a traditional foster parent. And I have no idea why I think that. I mean, these are the conversations I'm having to myself, right? Like I'm talking to myself. Like I have no idea what this means. And over the course of a couple years, the foundation came to my mind, and it came to my mind on what I call my God walks. And it's literally nature walks. And when I say nature walks, I am typically walking with elk or deer or something, right? There's a lot of animals here. And so I do believe they're God walks. And I sat with that with a lot of, not for you. You're not smart enough to do that. You don't know how you're to do that. All the things. I'm going to tell you all the things. And long story short, we've made this happen, and we are making this happen, and we are going to grow this. And I know without a doubt it's going to happen. But what I want to come back to is that when I go back 4 years, which is when my mother-in-law had a massive unexpected stroke, and we lost that pillar of our family. And then Chad and I chose to choose a different legacy and move to Montana. All of those things led to the foundation. And the foundation is God's work. So there's not a person in the world that cannot convince me that all of those things were to move us where we needed to be. And we would have never known we needed to be there without pain.
Yeah, exactly. I think that that's so important. And it's all of these things have to line up, and through the moments, the pain that we're in, we just like, sometimes it feels so unreal. Like, how can this happen? Like, but then we have to remember, and I think we talked about this before before we recorded, is that, like remembering those three things you do, like the gratitude or your to-do list of three things to do. Like we talked about that, but there's three things you need to do every day and worry about those. And then after over time, it adds up. But also the same part of that is gratitude. Like have a gratitude. And even if you write three things that you're thankful for each day, that you were able to pay your electricity bill, that you were able to buy groceries, that you were able to walk with your husband or take, whatever you're grateful for. That you, I mean, even there are some days, and I'll tell you this because like with my family, like health, the depression and things like that, sometimes it was good that somebody just got out of bed and saying, "Hey, I'm thankful I got out of bed and I took a shower."
Yeah.
Those things are so important because over time it adds up. And there may be times when you are having your worst day, like everything is closing in on you. You feel like you're losing everything. You can go back and reflect on that journal that you have, or the notes, or however you write those things down. You can reflect and like, I've been here before and I got through it. And I think that
Right.
that's so important. And I love that you're doing this with the organization. And I love that it's a foster foundation or nonprofit organization. And what you're doing is you're helping those children who are transitioning out of foster care. So once they turn adults into the world, correct?
That is correct. So what most people don't realize is that when you turn 18 and you're still in the system, you haven't been adopted, you haven't been returned home, you transition to what's called aging out. And aging out, truly all it means, and I just want you to stop and think for a second. If you haven't been adopted and you haven't been returned home, then the place that you're residing is probably not a super nurturing place, right? You've gone through, whether there's behaviors, whether there's just disconnection, it doesn't matter. There's not finger pointing. You're just in a place where you're not staying. That's what it comes down to. And so for the population of foster homes that are what I'm describing, they're not in it to make good change. They're in it for different reasons. And I'm not, again, there's no pointing fingers. It's just facts. It's just facts. And so when these kids turn 18, in a lot of cases, they are literally told, here's a $250 check. Good luck. And I just want you to think about what $250 does in today's world. Absolutely nothing. It barely buys groceries. Mm-hmm. These kids have been spent, for the most part, over 10 years in the foster care system. That's the average, because the average is between the ages of 7 and 8 that you're put in care, and these kids are 18. So think about that, right? This is 10 years. For those 10 years, they have been told what to like, what to smell, how to dress, how to act, where to go, when to go there. They have literally had no choices. They don't get to choose to have haircuts. They have to ask permission, piercings, anything. And this doesn't come down to safety. This comes down to politics, honestly. It comes down to politics and systems that are in place for systems, but not for humans. And so they go into this place of their lives with absolutely no skills. None. They've barely made it through high school in most situations. And that would be basic academic skills. But we all know that basic academic skills don't get you through life. You need life mm-hmm. skills, right? Mm-hmm. And so it is a devastating statistics that talk about homelessness. Over 64% of homelessness was spent some time in foster care. Over 56% of people rescued from sex trafficking spent some time in foster care. Mental health, drug abuse, I could go on and on. The population begins in foster care. And I am one of those people that I get so tired. I'm going to say it, like, so tired of bitching and no action. Mm-hmm. And for me, that's what this was. It's like, what can I do? I don't have the magic answer, but what I do know is that these kids, they have an opportunity to break their cycle, but they need someone to give them hope. They mm-hmm. need one person, 2 people, 10 people to give them hope that they can change it. And hope doesn't mean they want a mom and a dad. Most of these kids don't want a mom and dad. They just want someone to believe in them. Right. And so that's where the dream came from, is if we could come into these kids' lives at like 14, 15, so think freshman year of high school, and have a home that really focuses on just that, supporting them as they age. And when I say supporting, I don't mean telling them what to do. I mean, these are options. What are you going to do with them? This is your choice. And, you know, these kinds of things, but also teaching them about money, teaching them about filling out an application. Some of these kids don't even have an emergency contact. I want you to think about that for a second, right? Being somebody's emergency contact, giving them a mentor and something that they're passionate about, because they have some of the most amazing brilliance in their minds. They just don't know what to do with it. And if we can change that trajectory, we can change every statistic that everyone wants to complain about. And I want to give you one more statistic, because I am a numbers girl, but I try to keep it out of that. There's over 33 million small businesses registered in the United States. There's 22,000 children aging out each year. If every small business in the United States got involved, 250 businesses could adopt, and I say adopt, I mean that lightly, mentor, big brother, big sister, one child for 6 years, and we would not run out of businesses. 250 businesses. Think about like 5 people you know that would love to help a child. And if you got involved in one child's life, how that could change. And that's the mission. I want to show people that we can do this. We can all do something. We can't all adopt. We can't all open a home. But the big picture is I would love to create a blueprint where any state in the nation can open a home like we're designing to house and support and give these children hope.
I love that. I love that. In fact, manufacturing, and in the manufacturing world, there's 98.9% of 98.5% of the businesses in manufacturing are small businesses
Yes.
in the United States. And so, and and I get it. Some of them are small mom and pop shops and things like that. They don't know how to do a lot of things. But another thought is, and this is kind of probably a little different, but that they can provide technical skills as well for these
Yes.
children,
That's
learning
and
how to
that's the
weld.
yes.
Yeah,
When I talk about mentoring, that's what I'm
yeah,
talking about. The likelihood that most of these kids, I'm not going to say not, I shouldn't say most. There's at least 50% of these kids that have no desire to further their education.
yeah,
And honestly, may not even have the mental capacity to do that until they get a little bit further in their healing journey. But there's also 50% of these kids that are brilliant and are ready for academics or trade, because I'm a
mhm,
big trade believer, right? Like,
right,
but they just need one person to believe in them. That's it.
yep,
And that's why I say small businesses. I mean, there's so many statistics about Christians, and I think that's wonderful too. But I want these kids to have skills to better themselves, to create this cycle break, this legacy that they dream of. And in order
right,
to do that, we have to give them a skill where they can earn money. It's an action.
yeah, yeah,
And so when I talk about it, I talk about small businesses because we think about all the skills. I have money skills. You have time management,
mm,
manufacturing skills. Even your husband, he has skills that he could bring on,
mechanical,
right? We all have skills if we would take a minute to understand that these children are our children. And it is our responsibility to change what is currently the status quo, because the status quo right now is lacking so desperately.
what I love about that, what you're saying is, I just have this, me and my visions and thoughts and stuff. There's a lot of things out there to help uh, people that are inmates and
Yeah.
helping them transition out of jail. They've I'm not being mean, not trying to be mean when I say this, but some of them have made their choices that they made,
Mhm.
whereas these children are in foster care not by a choice that they made. It could be a choice of their parents, it could be a choice, different things that could have happened, but they didn't make a choice at 14 to be in the system that they're in.
Right.
And so if we can provide, and if the, state funding and organizations and nonprofits, and I mean, businesses and all these things, grants could be written to help these people, these children, who are our future, and
Yeah.
help them get these the skills that they need, would be such an impact. And I hear it all the time, from the manufacturing side, that we don't have people trained who want to be welders. People aren't going to school to be welders. People aren't going to school to be machinists. People aren't in tire shop. Like when I was hiring for, I used to be a mechanical production branch head. And when I was trying to find people, a lot of people didn't want to work or weren't
Yeah.
skilled in these things because they don't. But if we could help them now at this age, I will tell you that my son became a journeyman mechanic at the age of 21. One, because he had a father who loved to work with him, but also because he was able to take an ROP class and learn mechanical skills.
Yeah.
So when he was, what most people could not believe that he had the skills he had you know, he got hired as a full-time journeyman mechanic. People are like, "Where? What the heck?" And I'm like, "You don't." Again, it goes back to legacy, like how
Yeah.
family teaching you. But
Yeah.
he was blessed to have that. Where here, 4 years later, he's still doing a permanent, has a permanent mechanical position. Where a lot of kids don't have that. A lot
Yeah.
of his friends, we see them, they don't have fathers in their lives, or they don't have those things, and so him teaching them how to do these things has gotten them to get the jobs. But that's one
Mhm.
child, who's helping his peers. But could you imagine if you learned that at 14 or 15 or
Yeah.
16 and had that support? Like I could see so much for this foundation and helping, and I could see a house in every state, or even houses in every
Houses,
state.
right? Like, because
Right.
you're in California and the
Right.
numbers in California are the highest in the nation. So we would need multiple houses, but
Yeah.
that's possible. Anything
Mhm.
is possible, but it really just takes the knowledge base that everybody can do something. So even if you can't open a home, what can you do to support someone who wants to open a home? What can you do to support, even before we talk about homes? In your city, in your community, there are foster children that you may or may not know exist. And if you contact the agency about being a volunteer, it just takes one, right? I'm not going to say
Mhm.
it's going to be easy, but if 5 business owners came together and said, we want to mentor one child for the next 6 years, all through high school and the post 2 years of them aging out, we want to support them. We want to teach them what we know. We want to do whatever it is that I'm telling you, at first it would be like this. Oh, this is too much. We can't do this. But when people started getting wind of it, the impact is just absolutely mind boggling of what could happen. And like you said, the prison systems, what if we took all that money that we're spending and put it into the foster care system, and the prison systems never got as full as they currently are because, again, foster children are part of that system,
Right.
right? It's just a
Yeah.
cycle, and
Mhm.
they are the foundation of every other system.
Yep. It
And
starts
not
with the
because,
children.
like you said, they chose it,
Right.
because it was chosen for them.
Mhm. It starts with the children.
Yeah. And it was always in their lifetimes and in their stories, it's always been what is wrong with you versus what happened to you. And we need to start reversing that. What happened to you and how can I help you, instead of what's wrong with you? Because there's nothing wrong with them. But if most people knew the things that have happened to them, they might begin to understand why they behave and act out the way they do.
I love that. I love everything that you've created. And so, as we wrap up, because there's so much we could probably
I
do it
know.
like so much more. But as we wrap up, I mean, when could tell me a little bit about you. So you do coaching, you have
Yeah.
this foundation. But could we, if people wanted to, before you talk about, because we were talking about the foundation first, if
Yeah.
people wanted to donate or help the foundation, where could they do, and how do they contact? Who do they contact for that?
So fosteringthesummit.org is our website. And it's just, we've just given birth to this year. So it's all building. But like, our next event is a turkey trot at Thanksgiving. It's a virtual turkey trot. So you can create a group in any community you want. And that's what we're trying to build, is that community is everything, right? And so that is our second fundraiser. We did 100 miles this summer. Chad and I hiked 100 miles, and we invited community to do 100 miles in their area. So we're doing a turkey trot, and then we're going to be doing a virtual auction right around the holidays. And so those are going to be the 3 things that we start this founding year with. And it's really about spreading awareness. Getting people involved is the number one. Earning money or raising money is the number 2. So everything is on our website. You can find any up and coming events and all those things. And there's just a general donation place on our website also.
All
Um,
right.
crfinancialfoundations.com. That is my accounting firm, my bookkeeping firm. I, like you said, we do bookkeeping. I have clients all over the country. I'm a virtual bookkeeper. And I'm a financial coach. My financial coaching is one-on-one. I did some of the group coaching when I first started off, and I just realized that when it comes to our finances, people need one-on-one connection. They need to not feel more shame, because a lot of people feel shame around their money. And so it just came to me that, that for me, this is what works, and I'm going to do what works for me so that I'm as impactful as possible in each person's life. And so I do one-on-one coaching, but again, crfinancialfoundations.com. That's where anything with regards to money is involved.
And I love that, and I'll make sure that I put both of those links in the show notes. And then we did talk about this, but I mean, I talked about it in the bio, but you're also a podcaster. So you can
Yeah.
talk a little bit about your podcast.
The Courage Coalition. So the Courage Coalition is just that, stories of real humans living courageous lives. And when I mean courageous, it's not these big, huge things. Sometimes it's the small, little things. Sometimes it's the big, huge things. And a lot of times it's all the stuff in the middle, right? It's living true to themselves. It's stories of living true to themselves. We talk about mental health. We talk about foster care. We talk about sex trafficking. We talk about starting over. We talk about, there's nothing we don't talk about. And it was just really a place because I wanted everyday people's voices of courage to be shared with the world.
I love that. I love that. It follows along with the refine and shine model that I have as well. It's because everyday people, there's things that we can hear that can show it. You don't have to be the person on TV or all a millionaire to show that you made an impact in where you come and how you've pivoted or changed things in your lives to and you have the courage to do so. So I love
Yes.
that.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
as we wrap up, I mean, I'll make sure I have all your links in the show notes and everything. But I always ask my guests to just give my listeners who are listening today an action, a word, a phrase, a book to read, a quote, anything that you like for them to hear today in order for them to start to refine and shine because that's what it's all about. You have showed us how you and your husband have went through, you two, we shared it all. Teenage pregnancy, losing things, illness and all the things and rebuilding and all of these things to now having, a successful coaching business that is your full-time income for 3 years, plus you have your podcast, plus you guys started this foundation. So you have done a lot of great things to refine and shine. And so what is some type of action my people can do today?
Well, the quote or the saying that I'm going to give you, and it's just something I talk about a lot, is that our values define our beliefs, and our beliefs define our results. So we have to get very clear on who we are, our values, our core values, because everything about those are a directive of our beliefs, and our beliefs are a directive of our results. So I want you to think about that and journal about that. That would be the most powerful thing. But when it comes to any change in your life, collect your evidence. We've talked about that multiple times today, but it is the truth. You have to collect your evidence, whether that's what you've already done. If it's a money thing, collecting your evidence and how you're spending that behavior, because that's all spending is a behavior. And you talked about this, Angelina,
Mhm.
how powerful it was. And I will tell you that the number one surprising thing in personal finances is how much money is spent in eating out. Every time, hands down. So collect your evidence. If you need to pivot when it comes to finances, the very first thing, the most empowering thing you can do is collect your evidence.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. That for like that evidence when we looked at stuff and we're like, what? I go, and sometimes the food wasn't even that good. We're spending, I will be honest with you, people. Like we at one particular restaurant, it was close to $7,000 when I looked at it, and I was like, wow, we spent $7,000. That is crazy.
Yeah,
Um, and that's just because I tracked everything on my American Express, and I pay it off every month, but that's a lot of money,
that's a
and
lot of
so
money.
when we thought we're gonna buy this, I forgot what kind of grill it is, a Blackstone grill. We had always wanted one. We bought the Blackstone grill. We now have steak when we want it. We have potato or like whatever we do.
Yeah,
But we actually feel better about our like how we're doing, how we're feeling. It's fun. We enjoy it, and we've made our backyard a sanctuary for ourselves. And I think that it's so easy to do, and it's always easy to say you don't have money to do that, or it must be nice to have. Audit your finances
uh,
and you will audit what you spend, and you will see that you have the money, you're just spending it on the wrong things.
absolutely. I'll end with this one thing is that we are a family of six at home currently. I have two older children, and um, a lot of people ask, how do you guys travel as much as you do? I don't understand. It's so expensive. And there's two things. One is that travel is one of our number one value systems. And so we intentionally put money away for that. But two, we don't eat out, right? We do. I mean, the times we eat out are slim to none. And two, I cook everything, but also I'm wise with how we travel. We don't travel, 4, 5-star restaurants and all that kind of stuff. We travel for the memories. So
Mhm.
credit card points, hotels, whatever it is, there's ways around it. And so it's always just asking yourself, what is the most important thing for me and how am I going to get there?
Right. I love that. I love that. Well, thank you. You've been such an amazing guest, and I truly appreciate you being on today.
Thank you so much, Angelina. It's been a pleasure.